In 2015, El Salvador became the country with the highest homicide rate per capita in the world. Over 6,600 murders occurred, or 0.11% of the population. In just a year, violence grew so severe that morgues, cemeteries, and the forensic system collapsed, unable to perform so many autopsies, marking the highest point of a bloody era that lasted for almost 30 years. The times when gangs, mainly La Mara Salvatrucha and Barrio 18, ruled the country with cruelty and precision, weaving a network of control that spread to every corner, from the sidewalks of the poorest neighborhoods to the institutions of the state. It all began in the early 80s, when many young Salvadorans fled a devastating civil war by migrating to the United States. And they found refuge in Los Angeles, California. There, they formed gangs that became the most dangerous. In response to this growing threat, the United States government began deporting many criminals back to El Salvador, a war-torn country with little state control, a poorly equipped and inexperienced police force, many illegal weapons, weak institutions, and a collapsed judicial system. In other words, fertile ground for crime. That's why the gang members didn't take long to replicate the model they learned in the United States, starting a legacy of terror that would lead the country to the brink. Making him famous all over the world, the first step was recruitment, often forced. After an initiation ritual, violent and symbolic, the recruit chose his war name, while enduring a brutal beating that tested his endurance and submission. In most cases, this baptism had to be sealed with murders as a final proof of commitment. Women had to go through the same thing, but they were also forced to have sexual relations with several members or become the partner of one of them. Finally came the tattoos, the most distinctive mark, an unmistakable seal with macabre iconography that ultimately forged absolute and lifelong loyalty to the gang and its leaders. Additionally, it allowed them to be distinguished from their direct enemy, since Mara Salvatrucha 13 and Barrio 18 were never allies. Their rivalry for territorial control began in Los Angeles and was brought unchanged to El Salvador. This war was personal, ruthless, and relentless, spreading terror across the country for decades. They didn't conquer it, they tore it apart and divided it, taking control of nearly everything, from urban areas where authorities had to request permission to enter, to the trade of basic foods like vegetables, fruits, and meats. They extorted merchants who weren't part of the gang, charged them protection fees, and imposed forced loans with extremely high interest rates. They also took over drug trafficking, prostitution, and human trafficking, generating millions in revenue. To hide and launder these profits, they also took control of legal businesses like bakeries, hotels, bars, restaurants, public transportation, and even funeral services. Looking to close a cycle that began with death, the governments tried for years to fight them, even implementing the Mano Dura plan in the early 2000s, a strategy that aimed for a repressive response to gang violence. They made the laws stricter and conducted mass arrests. Though violence initially seemed to decrease, the plan ultimately led to negative consequences. Prisons became overcrowded, causing violence by housing rival gangs together. Authorities then separated them, assigning exclusive prisons to Mara Salvatrucha and others to Barrio 18, which gave these gangs a major advantage and let them reorganize behind bars, holding meetings, and indoctrinating recruits. The plan attacked the symptom, but not the root causes, and in 2004, the Salvadoran Supreme Court declared the Mano Dura plan unconstitutional, arguing that it violated fundamental human rights. Then, everything got worse as the organization became increasingly solid. Gang members negotiated with governments to gain prison perks, reduced sentences, selective transfers, and privileges regular inmates couldn't imagine, turning the prisons into privileged centers, into criminal fortresses equipped with appliances, televisions, video games, internet, drugs, alcohol, prostitutes, and, of course, cell phones, transforming the cells into criminal management offices from where they directed criminal operations nationwide with total impunity. But what did the gangs give in return? First, a reduction in the homicide rate, a temporary pause in selective extortion, and the suspension of public attacks, deceiving and giving false hope to the Salvadoran people for short periods, mainly during election times when they also offered to mobilize voters and intimidate opponents. After this period, they returned even stronger. The gang's power seemed absolute. International experts stated that their control had reached a point of no return and that it was already impossible to defeat them. But while everything was going through its most critical point, in 2015, a young man of 34 years old, named Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz, thought differently. He was convinced there was a way out and believed he knew it. He would get his chance years later. In that 2015, Bukele had just won the municipal elections of San Salvador, the Salvadoran capital, representing the FMLN, the leading left-wing party. He entered politics only 3 years earlier, in 2012, when he was elected mayor of Nuevo Cuscatlan, a small district of 10,000 people, just 13 kilometers from the capital. He donated his mayoral salary to fund university scholarships. Money wasn't his motivation, he already had it. He came from a powerful family. His father, Armando Bukele Catan, was a successful businessman and industrial chemist of Palestinian descent who converted to Islam. He founded El Salvador's first mosques and married Olga Marina Ortiz, a Salvadoran Catholic, and they became one of the country's most influential families, building a vast business empire that included pharmaceutical laboratories, television channels, textile factories, car and motorcycle dealerships, hardware stores, and advertising agencies. Along the way, they had 4 sons, never imagining that the eldest would end up becoming a globally recognized political figure. Nayib and his brothers attended the prestigious Pan American School, a top bilingual institution in the country. During his school years, he stood out for his calm behavior and somewhat introverted personality, but he was surrounded by close friends who now hold key roles in his government, including Maria Luisa Hayem, Minister of Economy, Fernando Lopez Larinaga, Minister of Environment, and Juan Carlos Bidegain, Minister of the Interior. Nayib began building relationships in school that would later play a key role in his administration. After leaving, he studied law at Central American University, José Simeón Cañas. When he came of age in 1999, he began working at Overmet, his father's advertising agency focused on major political campaigns, primarily for the one that would later accept him, the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front. Bukele helped develop innovative strategies that led to Carlos Rivas Zamora winning the San Salvador mayoralty in 2002. That success led to bigger campaigns for him, like Shafik Handel's 2004 presidential run and Mauricio Funiz's in 2009. The latter would become president. This was how Bukele got into politics, but before that, he dropped out of law school. He began studying economics in the United States but didn't finish, so he returned to work at the agency and other family businesses. He managed a nightclub called Code. Later, he became president of the local Yamaha Motors franchise, overseeing motorcycle marketing and related products. He stayed in that role until 2012 when he left everything to run for mayor of Nuevo Cuscatlan. He was 31 years old at that time and had to face Alvaro Rodriguez, who had been mayor 3 times and was from the Arena Party, the main rival of his own. After a good campaign, he managed to defeat him. During his term, he made Nuevo Cuscatlan one of the safest districts in the country. He enhanced free health care, launched a potable water system, upgraded schools, created a university scholarship program, and pledged to invest in security. In addition, he built boulevards, plazas, and parks, completing a term that many described as exemplary. So, after 3 years in office, he decided to take a big step and run for mayor of San Salvador, managing to defeat Edwin Zamora thanks to his strong performance and skillful use of social media as his campaign's core, along with bold promises. The first thing would be to fight crime with a well-structured plan, implementing a virtual security cordon with surveillance cameras, monitoring systems, and facial and license plate recognition. in direct coordination with the prosecutor's office and the national police. The second is to re-establish territorial control. The objective was clear: to recover the areas dominated by gangs, regaining the state's monopoly control over three fundamental functions for its existence: taxation, the administration of justice, and the legitimate use of force as a last resort. In El Salvador, gangs took over three roles: collecting money through extortion, enforcing their own justice, and using indiscriminate violence. Bukele argued that if a state could not control these three pillars, it simply could not function. In addition, he presented an even more ambitious plan called One Project Per Day. At 150 days in office, the completion of 150 projects was highlighted, showing many he was delivering on promises. Between 2015 and 2018, Bukele made a lasting impact on San Salvador, focusing on more than just material projects. He also spoke out against irregularities in his own party, saying the Salvadoran people were more important than his fellow party members and the leaders who welcomed him into the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front. Taking him to the mayor's office, he publicly denounced that his party's internal system had been taken over by a leadership that no longer represented the people or had them as a priority. He accused them of abandoning their principles and questioned the effectiveness, honesty, and capability of their leaders, including then-President Salvador Sanchez.
El Salvador has no president now. Mauricio Funes was a bad president, but at least there was one then.
I believe the government should help people escape poverty and join the middle class.
Instead of taking people out of the middle class and pushing them into poverty, principles are non-negotiable. I believe people cannot betray them. If I believe something, and I have to say it, and if people are asking me to say it, then I will be their spokesperson, and I will say it.
This strong criticism of the last two presidents and leaders of his party led to his disaffiliation from it, as well as his distancing from left-wing ideology. As time went by, Nayib Bukele's political approach evolved. He discovered that the principles of socialism were not applicable to the way of life he planned to build. Bukele stopped identifying with traditional ideologies and understood that human beings were capable of creating their own concepts, different approaches, and new ideas. He started his own party but couldn't register it for the 2019 presidential elections. So he joined the Grand Alliance for National Unity Party. Grand Alliance for National Unity. This controversial but strategic move kept him in the race. During this campaign, Bukele once again used social media as his main communication tool, connecting directly with the Salvadoran people and mobilizing a support base that grew exponentially. He won the February 3rd, 2019 election with 53.1% of the votes in the first round. Arena received 31.7%, and the FMNL got 14.4%. Despite opposition from traditional parties, Bukele won decisively and ended decades of bipartisan rule in El Salvador. On June 1, 2019, he became president with a clear plan for his initial actions. So 19 days later, he officially launched the Territorial Control Plan, which would consist of 6 phases and would change the course of the country forever. The first phase was called Preparation, and its goal was to reclaim the streets taken over by gangs, massively deploying agents of the National Civil Police and members of the armed forces, militarizing public security and restoring safety to many controlled areas. In addition, they declared a state of emergency in 28 prisons, suspending visits and blocking phone signals. It was also the beginning of strong criticism from the opposition, accusing him of violating human rights and constitutional guarantees. But Bukele didn't listen to them and started the second phase, called Opportunities, which began a few days later. And its goal was to prevent violence by providing educational and job opportunities to at-risk youth. He created the Cubes, Urban Centers for Well-Being and Opportunities, which are community spaces with libraries, computer centers, study rooms, support workshops, and sports areas. This phase had some budget issues, since a loan of $158 million was requested from the Central American Bank for Economic Integration to finance it, but only 91 were approved, which also created the first tensions between the president and a legislative assembly that was not very much in agreement. These tensions reached a new level during Phase 3, called Modernization. It began on August 1, 2019. This phase aimed to allocate $210 million to equip and strengthen the technological, logistical, and operational capabilities of the National Police and the armed forces. They needed drones, helicopters, armored vehicles, advanced weaponry, and modern communication systems, in addition to infrastructure and other essential technological resources to fight the gangs from all fronts. The Central American Bank approved a $109 million loan, and South Korea's government donated $5 million more. On January 30, 2020, the Legislative Assembly, with Arena and Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front votes, rejected this loan's approval, questioning the effectiveness of the Territorial Control Plan and expressing their disagreement with the level of debt it implied. In response to the refusal, on February 9th, Bukele entered Parliament angrily with 40 soldiers to demonstrate his resolve to execute Phase 3 of the plan.
They won't even approve money that doesn't belong to them but to the Salvadoran people, to guarantee the security of the Salvadoran people. We called ourselves here for a week. We will summon you again as the Council of Ministers if they approve the Territorial Control Plan. And if not, I will not stand between the people and Article 87 of the Constitution. It will be up to them to apply it. I will not stand in the way. If these shameless people don't approve the Territorial Control Plan this week, we'll call you back here on Sunday and ask God for wisdom again. We'll say, God, you asked me for patience, but these shameless people won't work for the people.
If you like the video, please like, subscribe, and share with friends. You would help me a lot to keep creating more content like this.
How is it possible that a criminal organization can take over an entire territory and the government can't get them out?
Because they're the government.
That's why.
Solving problems involves theory and execution. Execution can be complex, but you must begin with theory.
No state is unable to eliminate crime.
The Legislative Assembly prevailed, rejecting the loan and sparking a tense power clash. In response, President Bukele threatened to dissolve Parliament, and many of its members accused him of being a coup plotter, of attacking the constitutional order. Since then, several opposition parliamentarians have called him a dictator, and the international community has expressed concern over the military's inclusion in the president's demands. This conflict managed to halt the progress of Phase 3, and just a month later, the country faced the arrival of the pandemic, which forced the state to redirect its priorities. But despite that, Bukele did not back down from his commitment to the Territorial Control Plan, and he intensified his political campaign against his opponents, accusing them of having committed an unforgivable failure in terms of public security. This confrontation became the central axis leading up to the legislative elections of February 2021. A year later, in rallies and through social media, Bukele asked the population not to vote for the same people as always, and to place their trust in him once again, assuring that with a new assembly, he could finally carry out the modernization phase and further reduce crime levels. And so February 28th arrived. Bukele obtained a broad legislative majority in these elections, leaving his opponents with very few seats. With this new power, the president and the new assembly removed 5 sitting judges from the Supreme Court of Justice who had been critical of his policies and had blocked several of his initiatives, arguing the usual defense of protecting fundamental human rights. Bukele was already tired of this excuse, so that same night he appointed 5 successor magistrates aligned with his political vision. With this decision, he finished consolidating his influence over the 3 branches of government, which allowed him for the first time to carry out his project without institutional restraints, a move that is usually extremely dangerous for most countries. Of course, this sparked strong international criticism.
Watching how our country bleeds out. Let them keep killing, keep extorting, keep stealing, keep raping, keep assaulting, keep intimidating. What option do we have? You must have been frustrated arresting gang members only to see corrupt judges release them 3 days later.
Oh, they say they defend the Constitution, but they're accomplices of the gang members, and it's not just me saying it.
You've experienced it for years, taking those criminals behind bars and the judges releasing them. A few days ago, we caught a leader, one of the many leaders that have been caught, who was arrested 7 times. Between 2005 and 2016, you arrested him 7 times, and all 7 times he was released.
On July 6, 2021, the new Legislative Assembly approved the loan of $109 million to finance the modernization phase, signaling a major transformation in the state's security apparatus. These funds enabled the purchase of 4,000 security cameras and 113 drones with thermal sensors and loudspeakers, as well as specialized tactical vehicles designed to withstand ambushes in high-risk areas. Part of the budget was also allocated to upgrading key infrastructure, but the modernization was not only material. New training and education spaces were also created with an emphasis on intelligence, criminal analysis, and tactical operations. The results were soon reflected in Phase 4 of the plan, called Incursion. Its objective was clear: to penetrate and dismantle criminal structures entrenched in hard-to-reach communities, territories dominated by untouchable gangs. A few months ago, the tactic used was a military cordon blocking entire neighborhoods to identify and capture gang members hiding among residents. Bukele doubled the military deployment from 20,000 to 40,000 soldiers to achieve this. This phase began in July 2021, and by September, the most dangerous areas recorded a 75% drop in homicides compared to the previous year. El Salvador was finally removed from the world's most violent nations list, cutting the rate from 106 to 17 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants, the lowest since 1992. Everything seemed to indicate that the plan was advancing progressively and steadily, and that the rates would continue to fall. However, on March 26, 2022, the country suffered an abrupt surge of violence that took everyone by surprise. 62 homicides in a single day as retaliation by the gangs against the government's measures. Black Saturday was seen as the most violent day in El Salvador's recent history. This triggered Nayib Bukele's government to respond with drastic, immediate measures just hours after the massacre. He called an extraordinary session of the Legislative Assembly, in which the now famous state of exception was decreed, temporarily suspending several constitutional rights, such as freedom of association, the inviolability of communications, and procedural guarantees. In other words, from that moment on, the authorities could enter homes and make arrests without the need for a court order. A reasonable suspicion was enough. Additionally, the period of preventive detention was extended from 3 to 15 days, giving the authorities more time to investigate before filing charges. The interception of telecommunications was also authorized, allowing calls to be intercepted to prevent criminal activities. Lastly, the right to defense was suspended, restricting immediate access to a lawyer and limiting the possibility of filing legal appeals. The criminals had lost the rights that once protected them. They could no longer defend themselves. Of course, international human rights organizations raised an outcry. They expressed extreme concern, while those they defended decided to strike back with direct threats. Would they start killing civilians at random if the president didn't stop?
Rumors say they plan to randomly take revenge on honest people. Do that and there won't be any meal times in the prisons. 1.
Let's see how long your men last in there.
I swear to God they won't eat a grain of rice, and we'll see how long they last. I don't care what international organizations say. Let them come and protect our people.
Nayib Bukele responded firmly and defiantly. He accused NGOs and the international community of defending murderers instead of the victims. He stated that his measures were necessary and that the war against the gangs had already begun, and he had no intention of stopping it. In this context, he appointed Gustavo Villatoro as Minister of Justice, making him his right-hand man. From then on, the streets were filled with police officers and soldiers, setting up security cordons and carrying out massive operations, entering house by house, bursting in heavily armed, and taking out dozens of young people in handcuffs on suspicion of belonging to criminal organizations. At the same time, extreme measures were implemented inside the prisons. Food rations were reduced, access to sunlight was prohibited, and mattresses were removed from the beds. The president delivered a strong message: they are not going to be released, and approved legal reforms, raising sentences to 45 years for leaders and 30 years for lower-ranking members. 10 years for ages 12 to 15 and 20 years for ages 16 to 18, eliminating leniency for minors. Finally, an extraordinary budget of $60 million was approved for the National Civil Police and $20 million for the armed forces, with the aim of expanding security operations throughout the country. 2 weeks after the state of exception started, over 10,000 Salvadorans were imprisoned on terrorism suspicions, an astonishing figure for a country of 6.5 million inhabitants. This moment marked the beginning of Phase 5 of the plan, called Extraction, whose main goal was to remove every last gang member from the country's communities, capturing those who were still in hiding. During this process, over 2,000 weapons, 14,500 cell phones, and $1.5 million in cash were seized, dismantling the financial logistics of the Mera Salvatrucha and Barrio 18. Thanks to these actions, the government announced that all territories previously controlled by the gangs had been recovered. And on July 21, 2022, it revealed that more than 40,000 terrorists had been arrested, an impressive figure that ended up overwhelming the capacity of the existing prison system. Faced with this situation, the president raised the urgent need for a new high-capacity prison, equipped with reinforced technology and maximum security measures. That's how the construction of the Terrorism Confinement Center, or CHICOT, was ordered in record time. A mega prison specifically designed to house the most dangerous criminals in the country. The complex was built on a remote, state-owned 23-hectare plot, chosen for its isolation and easy control, far from urban centers. It has multiple security rings and several levels of electrified perimeter walls with charges of up to 15,000 volts, 250 surveillance cameras, cell phone signal jammers, and 37 watchtowers, equipped with anti-escape electronic systems, all designed to make any escape attempt virtually impossible. This mega prison was built under an emergency framework. It cost about $100 million for land and construction, plus $115 million for technology and security equipment. The funds were fully covered by the Salvadoran state budget, making it the largest prison in the Americas. The opposition questioned the lack of transparency in the process and the high cost. But at this point, their voices only resonated within their own circles.
Well, I've always said it, I've said it before, and I'm saying it now.
Money is enough if nobody steals. So why are they asking for funding?
Because so much was stolen over the past 30 years. Money would be enough if nobody stole, but it's already gone.
CHICOT is in Tecoluca, 74 kilometers from the capital. It's a massive concrete structure under heavy guard. Each of its 32 collective cells has a theoretical capacity of over 100 inmates and is equipped with the essentials: metal bunk beds without mattresses, a couple of cement toilets, and permanent surveillance cameras. No outdoor space or recreational access. There are also punishment cells, 3 by 3 meters, where uncooperative inmates may be held for up to 15 days, with only a small hole in the ceiling that lets in a faint light. To avoid unnecessary transfers, the CHICOT has courtrooms inside the prison, which allows legal proceedings to take place without the inmates leaving the facility. They are denied family and conjugal visits and may never see them again. Cells are lit 24/7, and food contains no animal protein, no beef, pork, chicken, or fish. For Nayib Bukele, none of them deserve a better diet than what many citizens can't afford, and they'll eat meat again only when everyone has the same on their plate. Otherwise, their taxes would be used to give privileges to those who were executioners of their families and friends, and that doesn't make sense. That's why the common diet is tortillas with beans, pasta, or rice, and they have to eat them without utensils. As you can imagine, international human rights organizations, such as Amnesty International, the United Nations, and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, have spoken out with deep indignation. They have released official statements and detailed reports calling for an end to these inhumane prison conditions for defenseless people.
If CECOT didn't exist, do the same thing again?
Maybe I would.
But Bukele didn't just go after the living, he also dealt with the dead, ordering the destruction of the tombstones that adorned the graves of gang members, eliminating any form of terrorist glorification, just as was done in Germany with Nazi symbols after World War II. To carry out this task, the government used inmates convicted of minor offenses as part of a recreational activity. It also removed all representative symbols from public spaces. Graffiti, tags, and marks were wiped from walls and facades as part of symbolic and social cleansing. The message was clear. The era of crime had come to an end.
In a very short time, El Salvador went from being the murder capital of the world, from literally being the most dangerous country in the world, to being the safest country in Latin America.
There isn't a single recipe, not a single formula that works the same for everyone.
But I do believe there's one ingredient that every recipe should include, or at least should have the right to include. That ingredient is courage.
On September 15, 2023, Nayib Bukele launched Phase 6 of the Territorial Control Plan, called Integration, focused on social reintegration and violence prevention, by attacking its structural causes, poverty and social exclusion. The National Integration Directorate was created to coordinate efforts among the state, private companies, universities, and communities, managing scholarships, jobs, and cultural activities. The goal is to give young people opportunities so crime is never an option again. 2023 was the safest year in El Salvador's history, with only 154 homicides reported. This equals 2.4 per 100,000 inhabitants, the lowest rate in the Americas, except for Canada. The country once considered the world's most violent is now entirely different. However, the president still has much to change, so he made a decision.
That's why, after discussing it with my wife Gabriela and with my family,
I announced to the Salvadoran people that I have decided to run as a candidate for the presidency of the Republic.
On February 4th, 2024, Nayib Bukele was re-elected president of El Salvador with 84.6% of the vote. Since his arrival, millions of Salvadorans can safely go outside. Their children now play in parks, once too dangerous due to kidnapping risks. Merchants can work peacefully without threats or extortion. Many once believed there was no solution, that it was very difficult to fight. Something that had been entrenched for so many years couldn't be solved overnight, and so many other excuses that many governments put forward. But in El Salvador, something different happened, something unthinkable.
There is no government that can't eliminate crime. It's absurd. The Leviathan. The state is always more powerful than criminal organizations. We've shown this. Once the most dangerous country, now it's the hemisphere's safest.
the criminal organization in Brazil is much larger, but the state of Brazil is also much bigger, stronger, and more powerful.
According to Nayib Bukele, his fight continues. After waging war on gang terrorism, he will now target corruption. Now, his enemies wear white collars instead of tattoos, making them potentially even more dangerous. But their days are numbered, since the president has announced the construction of a new prison inspired by the Secot and called the Center for Confinement of Corruption. Center for Confinement of Corruption. And he has asked the prosecutor's office to investigate all public officials, starting with those from his own party.
Just as we built a prison for terrorists, we will also build a prison for the corrupt. As we deployed state security forces and cornered the gang members until they were imprisoned, we'll treat white-collar criminals the same, regardless of their origin or whether their crimes happened 1, 5, 10, or 30 years ago. Let me remind you that thanks to the reforms made in this legislative assembly, corruption crimes no longer have a statute of limitations.
While in many parts of the world, governments are still debating how to confront crime without upsetting anyone or challenging powerful enemies, in an almost lost country, someone appeared who was willing to take on the challenge of recovering it, and in a short time, showed the world what a president is capable of when he truly wants to govern. When he's not stealing, negotiating with criminals and traffickers, using frontmen to form companies and win rigged contracts, or making excuses to do nothing. Many may consider that Nayib Bukele's methods have been extreme, but the conditions demanded being relentless. And thanks to that, his people stopped living in fear. Now, those who live like that are the murderers, kidnappers, extortionists, and rapists. Millions of citizens around the world say they need a president like the one in El Salvador to deal with the deep crime that is eating away at their countries. And I'm also part of that long list. That's why I made this story, to remind us that governments can address the problem. What they don't have is the courage or the will to do it. Maybe someday someone will come along who has both. And I hope to have the privilege of being able to see it, to sit in front of the computer and start writing that story. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, and explore other channel videos you might enjoy. See you in the next story. Goodbye.
Some people say I'm brave because we're facing terrorists, drug traffickers, the Federal Reserve international organizations, major world powers, and the local oligarchy.
And maybe I tell them that I'm brave compared to the parasites who ruled us before.
Maybe I'm brave compared to some politicians from other countries who must be just as parasitic as those who ruled us before.
But I'm not as brave as the soldiers, as the police officers, as those who are really doing this work, as those who risk their lives every day to bring peace to the Salvadoran people, and who truly face terrorism head on, face crime head on, face evil head on.